piano music for us while we're waiting.
Okay, greetings everybody. Welcome to the FileMaker Developers Group, User Group here in Dallas, Texas. We're glad to have everybody here. We're at the Harmonic Treehouse. Thank you, Harmonic Data, for sharing that with us. I'm Taylor Sharp. Greg Price and I are your chapter coordinators, and we're glad to have all of you here. We've just finished Dallas with an ice storm, so we're now trying to get back to normal things here. So good to see everybody back at work and all those things. A couple of announcements. Anybody of you guys Mac users out there that upgraded to Ventura 13.2?
Yep.
Your host. If you did, and you want to use the FileMaker debugger, and you would have what FileMaker considers a really long script, anything longer than 301 lines, and you have a comment in it, any of those combinations, your debugger does not work.
Cannot hear Taylor. Cannot hear Taylor.
They can't hear you.
They're saying they can't hear me.
Unmute your.
Get the unmute for me.
Fortunately, I'm not programming in FileMaker these days, so I'm good.
There we go.
You guys hear Taylor?
You don't hear me now. Anyway,
I can only hear
saying
distance.
if you happen to have the Mac Ventura 13.2 upgrade, it's not working. The debugger does not work with long scripts that is comments in it. So don't write long scripts or don't have comments in it. Otherwise, they are very.
They're working on it, so that is something coming.
Yes, we January. They had to announce that engaged for this year, and another engaged announcement. I'm disappointed. Hopefully, something about that.
Nothing happens. I myself am going to go to the German one.
So let's go to Germany. There we go. So
let's see what happens on that.
As far as other announcements, the Mac Studio, Polaris Studio, NFRs are out for types out there.
I'm getting a tremendous echo here on Taylor.
Yeah, I can't understand a thing saying.
Get on board. Polaris is giving out free developers at least for this year. So I'm sure that means they'll use next year anyway. Part of the game. So.
As a note on the Polaris Studio, no longer have to install Ubuntu desktop.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay.
Okay, so
is rocking and rolling here today. Let's about user interface and colors. I will have to put that as an area that I am weak in. I will have to thank Heather here and Heather talking about Heather that used to work at days actually got stolen over from Adobe, and that's when we got all these styles and themes and stuff like that. So disappointed. She went away. So, but anyway, we still have to make our things like that. We know that will teach us today. So, without further ado, Lynette.
Thank you, Taylor. Chat's telling me that there's a bit of an echo and you were a little distant. You muted, Taylor?
There we go.
All right. Everyone online, am I coming through clear?
Now you're echoing.
I'm echoing. I don't like that.
I hear my own echo. I'm not a fan.
Now I can't hear you at all.
Not echoing. You were fine here.
Any echo coming through clearly?
Now you're clear.
Yes, you're good.
Yay.
You're fine
Okay.
now.
Sounds good.
Excellent. All right, well, let's get this show on the road. I need to share my screen. And all right, everyone online, you can see some swirling colors, and it says color
Yep.
optimizing visual communication.
Yep.
All righty, I think we're good to go. Good morning, everyone. Glad you're all staying warm wherever you are, unless you're in Florida. Suppose you're never not warm. Gets below 70 there, okay. Thank you, Taylor, for having me on. I'm very excited about what we're doing today. This is my first FMPUG presentation, so I'm excited to be sharing with you guys some of the stuff I do on a day-to-day basis. Today's session will actually be interactive. So when I ask you a question, it will be a question directed at all of you. I am actually looking for responses. They're not rhetorical. And when I am looking for feedback, it will be very clear in that part of the presentation. When I'm looking for specific feedback, please answer. That includes you guys online. I have you go into my headphones so I can help somewhat corral the amount of information coming from in the room and online. So I want everyone involved and everyone participating as much as possible. As Taylor said, my name is Lynette Sykora, for those of you online who don't know me. I'm a technician on the design and documentation team here at Harmonic. My background is in traditional art. I have a bachelor's of fine arts with a concentration in painting and drawing. My graduating show was done in oil painting, and I have a fondness for watercolor and mixed media. Here at Harmonic, I am the in-house artist. I handle illustrations, logos, icons, persona images, wireframes, anything where we want to optimize our visual communication. You may be getting the sense that the work I do is not what you typically see at an FMPUG event. And you would be right. My training in the arts does not mean I know how to code, like even a little bit. I have no idea. What my training does mean is I have a good understanding of what speaks to people, and the need for functional design is universal. The jargon that describes design, now that may change field to field, call it under different names, but what constitutes good design, that is pretty much the same across the board. So as we are in the software field, let us start with what makes good user interface design, which is a supremely useless question, so broad as to be unanswerable, in fact. What elements of an interface design are objective versus subjective? This is a more helpful question. It is still incredibly broad, though. What are the elements of an interface design that make it communicative, functional, and usable? Now we're getting small enough that we can start working with this. We cannot control our users, nor can we predict the circumstances under which they will try to use our creations. What we can do is be intentional with our designs and try to eliminate as many variables as possible to ensure our design is supporting the competence of our code and bring it to success. How do we do that? What are the elements of a design that make it communicative, functional, and usable? Well, we will not be going over all of that today, but to start answering that question, I would like to introduce you to the elements of art and the principles of design. The elements of art are the 6 categories that anything visual can be broken down into. The principles of design are the 8 to 12, depending on how you want to break it down. It's changed in recent years. They are the categories that describe a successful design. Successful, of course, being a loose word because what is considered successful will change depending on user needs. If the elements of art are our hammer and nails, then the principles of design describe the house we are trying to build with those hammer and nails. Today, I want to focus on one element. Spoiler alert, it's color. And I would like to use that one element to create 2 different design principles contrast, and emphasis. Why pick these three? I just showed you that there are numerous options. Why pick these three? As I said, when it comes to the digital space, our users, there's very, very little we can actually control. For instance, what kind of device do they have? Is it color calibrated correctly? Is it in light mode or dark mode or both? Does that change on every other day? What is the contrast setting? How many pixels does it have? What are the RGB ranges set to? Is it OLED or Retina display, or is it something that should be retired because it's a dinosaur? What is the screen brightness set to? Is the user indoors or outdoors? Is the user partially or fully colorblind? Do they have aging eyes? Every single one of these affects how our users see our interface and any color embedded in that interface. The color you see is a unique experience to you at this point in time. Do not waste your time trying to recreate it for other people. It is not possible. What we can control are the hexadecimals we choose to implement and where we place them. Contrast is what will help us understand which hexadecimals to pick, and emphasis helps us know where to place those hexadecimals. Color, we'll come back to that. Let's start with contrast. What is it? Simply, it is being strikingly different from something else. Most people would think of extreme lights and extreme darks when talking about visual contrast, but that is reductive. Contrast is the difference between two things. It can be done with color, dark next to light, red next to green, but you can also create it with lines, having thick lines next to thin lines, curvy lines next to straight lines. It can be done with shapes, geometric next to organic, filled next to outlined, and you can do it with texture. I don't know why you're putting texture in your interface, but you are putting texture in your interface, don't. Metal next to silk, velvet next to wood grain. All of these are contrast. So when compared to this white background, is this black circle high or low contrast? High contrast, exactly. And what about this light gray circle? High or low contrast compared to the background? Low, exactly. You got it. Not super complicated, I promise. What is emphasis? Emphasis is the special prominence given to a thing. You know, when you look at something and your eyes are just like immediately dragged to one spot, that's emphasis. If we leverage this concept, we can ensure an instinctive understanding of our interface by a user who has no prior experience with it. If you want someone to start in a specific place and do a specific action, then you want to draw their eyes to the goal you want them to complete. Emphasis is that special importance placed on a thing. For example, when this black box with the red circle appeared, where did your eyes go?
Red.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Red circle. Caught your eye, dragged it in. Contrast and emphasis are what I want to create in our interface. We're going to use color to do it. Color is one of the more complicated elements of art due to its variability and its universality, which make it a familiar experience for everyone save the blind. This familiarity leads to color being used as a shortcut in communication regularly. In our culture, for instance, red is most often equated with stop, and this is primarily due to street signage. Every day you're having that reinforced. We could leverage that association if it benefited us in the purpose of our interface, if we wanted to. Color is one of the many ways in which we can catalog and share information, making it a very powerful tool. One that is sadly poorly wielded most of the time. Color can help the user by creating linked meanings and uses in their mind that result in faster parsing of information and better adoption of future layouts and updates. But too much color will lose any meaning to the viewer and become noise the user has to pick through and tune out, causing mental fatigue and associated weariness. So no matter how well your product functions, people get too tired to figure out how to use it, doesn't matter, it flops. So how do we make sure we use the right amount of color? I have said that word a lot. Actually, what is color? You guys off the cuff have to define it. How would you guys define color? Wavelength, okay. You're not wrong. I'm not sure how to turn that into an interface, but wavelength is technically correct. Any other guesses? No? Light? Okay. There, yes. Frequency, subjective element. Okay, I like that.
What's experienced by the human being.
Ah, okay. Taylor said it's the human experience of seeing, which is probably the most true, but also the least helpful for what we're doing today. So according to the dictionary, color has 7 definitions, and every one of these definitions probably applies to something every one of you said in this room. The only definition that is even close, remotely helpful is number 3. Vividness of visual appearance resulting from the presence of brightly colored things. I detest this definition because it uses the word in the definition, which is utterly unhelpful. There are a number of ways to break down color as a concept and make it useful and graspable and applicable. The way I would like to break it down today is a more artistic way of describing color. And that is breaking it into the trio of hue, saturation, and value. These are the parts of color we're discussing today. They are the last 3 of the 5 jargon I want you to learn. We've got emphasis, we've got contrast, now we're going through these 3. Let's start with hue, which is the least important of the 3 parts of color. Hue is the proper term to refer to the name of a color. Red, green, and blue are all hues. Hue and color are often interchanged. Hue has a very specific meaning, unlike color, as we just saw. So today, since we need the ability to refer to things in a precise manner, I'd like us to be intentional with our choice. And so we're going to use hue to help differentiate when we're talking about the name of something or a different part of it. So if I were to ask you guys, what is the hue of this rectangle? You would tell me what? Red. Yes, it is red. Taylor, go get your eyes checked. What about this one?
Green.
It is green. Yes, exactly, green. Hue is just the proper name for the sensation your eye is registering. Next up, we have saturation. Saturation refers to the intensity of a color, how rich, vivid, or lack thereof a hue is. While saturation is more important than hue, it is less important than value. Since saturation directly affects the specific hue your eye is seeing when we are talking about color palettes and their application, we are more interested in the level of saturation than the specific hue, as the hue may not be what you expect it to be because of how saturation levels work. We will come back to that particular thing. So based on the scale I just showed you, what level of saturation is this rectangle?
Middle.
Middling, yes. Yes, middling. And what about this one?
Low.
Yes, low saturation, exactly. Finally, we have value. Value, when we are talking about color, yes, I know that there are a variety of values in the world. When we are talking about color, value is the relative degree of lightness or darkness. It is the most important part of color because it has the largest effect on the specific shade we actually see. For instance, a high saturation light red will look like a bright pink, whereas a high saturation dark red will look like a chocolate brown. Pink is the name of the hue. Brown is the name of the hue. Both of them are technically reds at different values and different but the same saturation level, but different values. So this is why our value is the thing that we want to establish first. Every color has a relative value. And with practice, you can learn to see what the relative gray value of a color is. But value is most easily expressed in black and white, which is why it is highly recommended that whenever you start designing, you do the entire thing in black and white first before you ever start mucking about with hue or saturation. For this rectangle, is it a middling value? Is it a dark value? Yes,
Light.
it is a light value.
Light.
It is a light value. Yep. And what about this rectangle?
Dark.
Dark.
Yes, dark value. So to summarize, contrast is the difference between two things. Emphasis is the special importance placed on something. Color, for the purposes of design, is most easily broken down into hue, the name of the color, saturation, the intensity of the color, and value, how light or dark the color is.
Can you clarify the difference between saturation and value?
Getting my art lesson today from Lynette. Of course, I already know this stuff, but
Value is how light or dark it is. Saturation is how intense it is. You can have a very light green and it would be low saturation and a light value. You can have a very low saturated green and it have it be a dark value. There are two different vectors on which you can manipulate the color.
So if you were talking about like on grayscale, you're talking not about percentage, but intensity.
Which one?
Percentage would be your value, intensity being the saturation.
Are you talking about specifically how it's displayed within a program?
No, I'm just trying to, because as I look at that, I can see that green being 100% to 10% is basically the same as the black being 100%.
So you're trying to read it into a program. There is a thing that we're coming up on. Put a pin in that. There's something we're going to do in a few minutes, and that might help clarify. And if not, we'll come back to it. Where was I? Okay, so we have the parts, we have contrast, we have emphasis, we have the parts of color. When it comes to designing, we care most about value, as that will help us set our initial contrast and emphasis levels in the design, which is why you should always design in black and white. Even in oil paintings from Leonardo da Vinci's time, the rule has been you sketch out your painting and then you do a mini one in black and white before you ever do the full painting. You guys just get to click in objects and tell it to change the fill. Don't complain to me. Every painting I've ever done in my life, I have 2 or 3 versions of it. Way easier digitally than it is in real life. So we have our 2 goals for our interface, and we have the tool we're going to do it, which means we are now going to go to the sandbox. Yes, we are going to have fun with the sandbox. Can everyone online see a FileMaker window?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Welcome to the sandbox. I am using FileMaker today as my teaching space. But what we're doing is applicable for anything, regardless if it's a business card or dashboard coded in HTML, printed on cardstock. I don't care. Do not limit yourself where you apply these ideas. They are fair game across the board. On the left of today's space, I have put up some references for you guys. I have a hue scale, a saturation scale, and a value scale. There's a couple other tools here that we will get into as we start playing around. But before that, there are 2 tools I would like to show you. If you go into FileMaker, and any program is going to have some version of this, but in FileMaker, if you come to color, click on other colors, you get this little thing here. Click on the little slider icon, and in here, you come all the way down to HSB. That stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. And you guys in the digital world decided you had plenty of things labeled value. It probably has to do with all the math you handle. So you decided to change it to brightness. As far as these programs grow, value, brightness, same exact thing. What's great about this little tool is we can set it to, oh, I don't know, let's say green, maybe blue. Yeah, let's do a blue. And I want it to be a relatively saturated blue, but I want it to be kind of dark, kind of nice Mediterranean color. So like maybe that's going to be my primary color in the interface. But then I want, I can't affect the tools, I'm afraid. I didn't even know you could change that setting. Anyways, so I have this kind of medium blue, right? And maybe I want an orange that's in the exact same family as that blue, because for color theory reasons, orange is the one I want. Well, then I can just drag hue over to orange, and you can see it makes it kind of a soft brown, right? Or I'll go back to my blue and I have this deep rich blue. Well, now I want a really light blue, but I don't want as much contrast with the white, so
Could you,
fill it out.
could you enlarge your palette? We can't see what you're doing.
I was just asked that. I can enlarge it this way. I'm afraid I can't actually increase the tools. Fred used magic, so whatever he is streaming in the recording should be much bigger to see. I'm sorry, I can't increase the size of the FileMaker tool. We will come back to this, but if you're ever needing to make a custom color that is related to a color you already have, use this. It's going to be the simplest way to do it. The other tool I really wanted to show you guys is a website, which is a color contrast checker. So if you come in here, foreground, so that's the thing that's going to be in front. It could be text, it could be a fill, don't really care. And background, that's whatever is behind the color. It is gonna, you can put in a value in either, and it will tell you, according to accessibility settings, if it passes. So for instance, this really like rich, hypersaturated kind of mid blue against white passes for small text, bolded text, and for objects. If I take this blue and I make it a very light blue, you can see it fails all of these criteria. So for colorblind people in particular, or for aging eyes, you want as much contrast as you can get away with in your palette, because your ability to see color starts to recede as you get older, and your ability to perceive finite details with really fine detailed text tends to fade. With color blindness in particular, it tends to be reds and then greens that go out first, and they either tend to look brown or grayish. So if you have blue on blue and there's not enough contrast, it's just one solid box. I can't see a thing, right? And if you have the same saturation level for a red and a green and someone can't see either of those colors, there is no differentiation between those two buttons. You want one of those to be lighter or darker to differentiate that, hey, they mean something different. Hopefully other stuff in your interface reinforces what that different meaning is. But one of the ways you can do it is by contrast. So there's a number of these sorts of tools online. This one's free. It's great. I can give the link to Taylor and you can get it out to people if you guys want it. Now, to what we're spending the rest of the day doing. I would like to introduce you guys to Lucky Coin. It is some kind of accountant budgeting interface, something or other thingy-gumber. I made it up. It's fake. Any relation to something real is an absolute coincidence. The numbers don't match. Everyone is from Scandinavia because their last name ends in son. Don't pay attention to details. It will just make your head hurt. They don't match. That is not the point of today. What is the point of today is we're going to go through an exercise and we are going to design the colors for this interface. We're gonna apply some colors, see if we can test what I'm preaching about, see if it holds some water. We've already got white and gray, exactly. We got no contrast, which was intentional. I made everything white and gray to keep it as blank a slate as possible, to not influence what you guys want to do. It is meant to be a blank slate. I will not be dealing with alternate states today, as that overcomplicates the process of what we're trying to go through. There will be a few alternate states, like I got a couple things selected in here, but for the most part, we're not going to be worrying with that. The principles, though, will be the same, so you should be able to come up with some alternate states on your own. We have navigation on the left. We have a display space over here on the right. We have icons, we got buttons, we've got text. We even, look at this, someone taught me how to make things, a popover. I know, we got all this stuff. Y'all should be so proud of me. I had to learn FileMaker for this. I love you guys so much, you don't even know. Welcome. So, without further ado, let us begin. To start, we need to answer a couple of questions. First off, what is the purpose of this interface? Obviously, I've already designed it somewhat. We've got a wireframe going, but we still have to answer that question to help guide what we want our user to do. So based on what you guys see here, what is the purpose of this? Bottom left, current balance. Okay. Purpose is to see the current balance. All right.
Transactions.
I got review transaction history because some people are bored on the weekend. Someone said something online. Please repeat it. No? Just hearing things? Okay. Anything else? Quick pay. There's a quick pay. Don't know what it is, but it seems to be important. All right. So we care most about our current balance. We seem to care about the transaction history, and because presumably of the current balance, we care about the quick pay.
It also looks like there's some things on our navigation there to the left that have something that require our attention. Little exclamation marks. Yep.
Okay. We have notices to attend to something.
We have search
Badges.
things and filter things.
Okay, we have search and filters.
I wasn't ready. You weren't ready? No, she said it didn't work those days.
Have to make sure we're paying the right.
Okay. Beware of loan sharks. I'm going to go with that's probably most important. We're trying to avoid loan sharks. That's our purpose. Avoid the loan sharks. The only way to avoid that is to stay on top of our balance and make sure we're up to date. So as far as purpose goes, I think I like where we started. We care about the current balance because we need to beware loan sharks.
Okay.
And then I think secondarily, we're going to review transaction history. I like that. Are we good with that? Yeah? Okay. So based off of that purpose, what are the most important objects in our interface? We already called out one, and that's the current balance down here in the bottom left. Okay, running balance. Elaborate more on that, Rob. You said what the user can do with this. Would you know that?
I mean, I would assume you could just
We can't hear the questions that are being asked in the room.
Okay.
I don't know how to exactly explain that.
So the observation that was made in the room, for those of you online, is that the thing we probably care about highlighting most, aside from the running balance and the current balance over here, are the actions that the user can take. And what we have yet to decide is if those actions are these things over here, or if it's somewhere within this transaction history that we're seeing displayed. That is kind of up to us. We do have a search function, a print function, an export function, and I picked a random icon. Don't ask me what that's supposed to be. There you go. It can be a sort. We have a sort function. Sort, self-service, report. Yeah.
It's a
Okay,
sorted
so we
occupation.
Sorted occupation, yes. So we care about user actions, and those currently seem to be buttons on upper right, tabs on left, and maybe the pop overs in report.
Can I suggest that?
That's how that's spelled. Okay.
Can I suggest that in a real world situation, I don't know if you can you can do this with your demo, but whether or not one of these is overdue would be something you want to alert the user to.
Is this? So it was pointed out he's online. I'm sorry, I don't actually know your name. Your tag's not popping up.
Oh, it's Dennis Burnham here.
Dennis, thank you, Dennis. So Dennis pointed out that in a real world situation, we'd want to know if something's overdue. And in my demo, I didn't specifically call out, hey, you're in trouble here. We do have a few negative numbers. That's just really an amount. And we can see where payments were made, but not when payments are due. We do have an hour tracker and an attendance tracker. So we have,
I thought of that.
yeah, that might be something under payment plan or reimbursements.
You mentioned loan sharks, and that's what brought it to mind.
I mean, if you're dealing with loan sharks, yes.
Or
staying on top of your payment seems pretty important. I think most people like their kneecaps and want to keep them. All right, so we have some initial things to work with. Let's start there. All right, do you guys want to build a light interface or dark interface?
Dark.
No, online's voted for dark. They want to reverse out. All right, let's do dark. We're going to do a dark interface. So it sounds like, based off of our objects we've identified as more important, this shape over here, we want to have more contrast than this display space. So if we look at our guidelines, first of all, design in black and white. I'm just going to use black and white. Number two, always work big to small. So our biggest shape here is this background. So I'm going to put it we got to start somewhere, right? We're going to put it kind of a middle gray. So that way we can make this second biggest shape a very dark gray, because now it's more interesting of the two, right? Personally, I'm a big fan. Come back, thank you. Of that kind of a look myself, as far as showing which tab we're on. Don't worry, I'll get rid of the lines in a little bit. Now, let's take a look at some of those objects we identified as important. We've got current balance in the bottom left, and we have the running balance over here. Let's start with this one. I know you guys are going to be like, this is a really dumb question. I'm asking you anyways. What is highest contrast against a very dark gray or black? White, exactly. So that probably means that we should make this little button white. Or maybe we want to make the fill here white. And then we want to make the quick pay button black. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you like?
Medium gray on the button.
All right. I hear general consensus that this is the preference. We can change text to white. We can do that. All right, that is kind of, I made that the wrong color. Excuse me. I apologize. Why aren't you
Can't
cooperating with me?
stand gray text.
Do what about the text?
Can't stand gray text.
Can't stand gray text. Okay, gray text is not allowed. We have to change the text. All right, there's agreement in the room. White, vote is white. All right, we're making all the text white. Well, you can make it a very, very faint gray, and that is important because it's not going to read as harshly against your eye, but because of how dark the background is, it's gonna look like white, right? There's a lot of whites in the world. There are a lot of whites. Stone, we're gonna make it stone. That's a little darker. They're laughing at me and I don't know why. You guys online are my friends. I like you better. You're laughing, but it's true. You guys are nicer to me. All right, so we have, thank you. Nope, that's not what I want. I want this.
Yeah, I probably personally dropped the value of the sub items under my account chapter slightly.
Okay, so you think those should be a little dimmer? I agree. I think that makes sense. Because right now, they're not what we're looking at, right? They're less important. We want to de-emphasize. So they're just a little bit softer, whereas my account, chapter, and current balance are emphasized. And Chris, Brian's got the hang of this.
Now, where's the balance there?
Mm-hmm.
Should we go darker on that or lighter on that?
Well, I think to answer that question, we got to come over here and decide if this is too dark a gray for our main space. Yes, it's too dark a gray, or yes, we should do that. All right, we have a vote that it's too dark. So let's try making it a little lighter. That is apparently the color I used for the text. It was illegible.
So we just had
We did. Yes, if you wanted to know what it's like for colorblind people and there's not enough contrast, it's that. Well, we got to change some things. Got to change some things. So let's start with some of these buttons. Dark is kind of a nice contrast. We said we cared about the buttons, but do we care about them more than the navigation? No? Okay, so they can't be black. So they got to be maybe a darker gray. We like that better? Maybe? Less dark. One value lighter. Let's try that. Okay, so all of our little buttons are kind of a medium gray. Let's make this one match. Since it's a button. Okay. We got some big text over here. Nope, never mind, come back to the text. So then we have the header of our report space. I feel like that's not very important. The text is what's important.
It should be legible.
Should be
Yeah,
legible,
the
I agree.
text is the elephant in the room.
I feel like it's important insofar as visually frame everything else.
Right, it provides the context.
Like a frame on a picture frame helps draw the eye to what's looking at, but frame is the frame. So I don't know what that means for value estimation.
Right.
I think it is important though, for purpose of context and for chunking the data that's on your screen is really vital that it gets grouped together.
I'm going to stop sharing for that. You guys know. No, wrong button. Wrong button. There we go. I feel like online people are easier if they can just hear what you guys are saying and not have me repeat it. Can you guys, what do you say something?
There's a column header there that needs to be valued.
Can you guys hear Eric?
Yes.
I don't know if that was a yes. I think that was a
Yes.
yes. Okay, good. Thank you.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. All right, back on track. Sorry about-
Awesome.
All right. So we were just having a debate about how important the header of this report space here is. We agree it's important because it helps you understand what is in the portal, but it's not as important as some of the actions we want the users to take, which would be these buttons. Yes, Paul.
I was just say whenever I introduce someone new to
I
database.
still say the elephant in the room is the text for the transactions. I can't get past that. First, elephant. Take the elephant first.
Elephant.
The text on.
Oh, yes. We haven't gotten there. We're still working on big shapes before we go small. The text has to change. It's not legible right now. I agree. You were saying, Paul.
Whenever I introduce someone to databases, one of the things I tell them is that if you know what an individual record represents, you know a lot. And so somebody looking at this for the first time, they need that header information to know what these individual records are.
Okay.
Is this a list of transactions? Is it a list of future transactions? A list of debts? What is it? That's why the header is important.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's try this combination of things. Didn't do what I wanted it to. That was very rude of it.
Excuse.
Man.
So it looks like when you.
I managed to group them incorrectly. I told you guys.
AMZ, there's like 30 MDs.
Can we not do that, please? That we will be here all day. We do that. All right, so we have a header, but now that we're starting to see our contrast levels, it's becoming quite apparent that this background is honestly still too dark. I'm gonna have to bump it one higher so we can actually read things. And that is, our navigation is definitely the most important thing, right? Your eyes are just dragged to that spot. So strong, so dark. Maybe too much, exactly. So maybe we don't care as much about the navigation as we thought we did, because we said we wanted a dark interface, but if we want to focus on the navigation, well, that means that this area over here has to be lighter for us to be able to display this amount of information without it getting confusing, right? So maybe we have too many things we said we decided we care about. So do we actually care about the navigation, or do we just care about the current balance at the bottom? Just care about the balance. Okay, in that case, let's move it to maybe there. Maybe one higher. Yeah, that's a little softer, a little bit less harsh. I kind of like that.
And you could make the, I'm a big fan of hover states, so I would probably, now that you've lightened the sidebar a little bit, I'd probably hover and do a slightly darker background for that row, you know, just to indicate which thing they're hovering over, what they're about to click on.
I think one overarching principle that is being illustrated here is that there's no hard and fast way of doing this. This is cut and try until it works.
You may or may not be foreshadowing the end here, Doc. So we've got some level of colors going on here. Let's get into our portal rows a little bit. Now, the way I've set this up is where we're not doing alternating row colors. What we do have is the row that has been selected can get highlighted. Now, since we're doing a reverse out, we don't actually want to use white anywhere as a highlight, except in very rare cases. So I would personally recommend mimicking your header bar, right? As Paul pointed out, telling you what each of these things is very important. So then your eye is saying, oh, okay, this color or this value repeated here, I guess that means that this one matters.
I would disagree, Lynette, and the reason is because people are used to seeing reports on screen that are sub-summarized, and that gives the look of a sub-summary level. I would keep it dark, but not exactly the same shade. I would go a little bit less, just a little bit lighter.
Okay.
Selected row.
Counter question.
So it doesn't look like something else.
Counter question, once we get into color, maybe this header stays gray, but this becomes a color that is the same level of gray, right?
Could be.
Could be. That would be a different way to tweak it.
Could be.
Different contrast.
But it should not be confused. It shouldn't be, the selection or the decision should not be one that creates confusion about what it represents.
Yes. Now we don't have a sub-summary here. What this thing is saying is, hey, this is what you've clicked on and this is what you're looking at right now. And this is the popover that we can pull up.
And I would also argue, Heather, that if this, dummy application has no sub-summaries anywhere ever in any menu or submenu in the interface, then that potential confusion for, oh, is this a sub-summary, may not be there as strongly as a system that does leverage those a lot.
And in a reverse out, if you're wanting it to be the highest contrast for sub-summary, it would be white, not black. So the black is actually going to feel softer than a white.
Well, I think it also depends on how you're going to format the text.
Yep. But we're not there yet because that's too small.
I'm just saying it should not, I don't think it should be exactly the same as the header because that can create confusion.
All right, then let's bump it up by 1. Let's soften it a little bit. Now we have, this is our next biggest shape that doesn't have specific information tied to it, right? Do we want it to blend into the background? It is right now. I would argue probably not. Let's see. Right? No, it should not. So now, because this is the thing that's biggest in our interface and it's taken up the most space, this is starting to feel like a darker interface again, because our main area is now a darker shade. It also means that this highlight bar, personally, I would argue, is too light. It's not standing out. So now we would need to go darker than the header.
And that works too.
That works too.
I like that better.
So let's go ahead and wrap up on getting some of this text in a easier to read contrast, and then we can start adding in some color. So personally,
on one of the large objects real quick.
Yes.
The bounding box, the outline. Purely in the dark is,
Oh, I'm removing all of the lines now that we've started to get fills in. I had to leave the lines there so that way I knew where the shapes were when we started,
okay,
because everything was white.
thank you.
Yep.
Focusing too much on detail.
Well, those are big
Promise.
objects.
Promise, I see it.
Okay.
Changes. Excellent. Nope, I want that. Huh? All right, I think that's most of our outlines. So let's come in here. I would think, I don't see any reason not to do the same just barely off-white that we did for the text over here, or I mean for here. So let's try that. Does that feel too bright? What do we think?
Go ahead and apply it to the whole column. And we'll see.
You would argue brighter, okay. Then we're gonna make it pure white because that's the next step. This is as bright as it goes. I did something wrong. That's because I did make it pure white. It literally can't go brighter. So if that's feeling too bright for you, that means that there's not enough contrast. So now we're gonna have to scale back the background. You like that better? Okay, he likes that better. Personally, another one of my rules, less is more. The fewer values we can get in here, the better. So I would vote, let's just keep all of the text that same way. Just do it across the board.
By the way,
Wrong
notice
one.
how Lynette's leveraging styles
Yes.
rather than localized formatting.
Yes.
You should do the same.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing, Eric. Yep.
Alrighty. So now we have a decision to make. We've set all of the text in our display space to white. But we also have text in our header, which we said is more important than what is in the report in general. And then we have the text for the line that we actually want to read and drill into. Those aren't standing out anymore. We could make it pure black. It doesn't have enough contrast with that background, right?
So
what do we want to do?
Well, what if we made the highlight color of the row really light rather than?
You could make it very light. That's an interesting idea. You could even make it the same as the background and make it look kind of like it's moving through. Let's try that. Go through and make all this text black. I couldn't, unfortunately, make these a group because they have different bolding assignments and justifications, and you guys know how this works.
Makes my heart go pitter patter. The button's too dark.
Too dark, you think?
Yep.
Daisy beat me to it. She said it should be the same button color as the others. There we go. I like it. Without a line. Okay, I agree. This definitely reads better. And we've just said text should probably be white on those buttons, which means we need to go up here and update these guys. Icon, you're going to be white. And now all of your friends can match you. I don't know why I got that.
You click the drop down theme rather than style, probably. So just re-click.
Well, whatever.
There you go.
There we go. All right.
Man, Apex Blue is looking better and better.
It is, right? Oops. I forgot that it was being done like that. As you can tell, I'm not using FileMaker how it is meant to be used. So there's a little little misusage where necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to black because we changed the text here that's on this light gray because we said, hey, those are more important. And we wanted to make that a little bit more obvious. What do you guys think? Do you like that being black, or do you feel like it's less important? It just needs to go away. This up here.
I think it should be black. It's important insofar as it is as summary title information for the page.
Which means we got to change this one over here so that we can see it.
It's like your placeholder. This is where I am. This is what I'm looking at and who I'm looking at.
Go away. Thank you.
The same thing with the user details in the top right.
Ah, I was intentionally avoiding looking at that.
Depends on if we're in private browsing mode or not.
Well, I couldn't even see the user details over here. I just thought it stopped at the
You're in
button.
incognito mode, then this now, right?
And I need that to be none.
Mini bars, you have to
Save.
in the area that you know so you can find them.
So let's talk about buttons. We've got currently officially one type of button. We got two. We got these buttons up here, which we have reflected here, and we have this white button over here. So for all of these buttons on lines that we're not actually paying attention to, I went ahead and changed it to this header color. You can hardly see them. They kind of blend into that background, which is maybe a good indication that, hey, this isn't dark enough. Of course, now it's the same color as our buttons. So what do you guys think? Does that mean that we should make these more important buttons darker?
Are those column headers sortable?
Ah, that is a good question. And I don't know. Do you think they should be?
That's scope creep.
Need a change order?
I'm just thinking about the user here.
So what
You're
if
not the user.
what if we did a thing? So if we left the background for the header the same color that it was,
okay,
but then the payment buttons on the non-active rows, rather than made those filled, if we had them basically empty with an outline.
Yep.
So essentially reducing the amount of contrast, not talking about black and white contrast, right? But
so you want to give them, you want it to look like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Consistent with how you're handling the non-selected rows.
Okay, I'm good with that. Now, there may be another solution, but we're not to the color yet, because something we could do is we could make these slightly different color, but it's that same value, so it still recedes.
Or could we make it the same hue, but a lower saturation?
Or we could do that. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up the black and white section. We'll go ahead and make those blacks, that way they match. And then you want that to stand out. We'll let that line up. There's other chairs you can move. All right, so at this point, the only thing we haven't touched is their logo, which we'll come to in a moment, and these little badges that seem to be telling us, hey, panic, pay attention to me, come here. Do you think we should try messing with those now? No? You want to wait?
Yes, we'll get.
I think they're too big.
Color?
Yes.
We're not messing with proportion and spacing today, Doc. One element at a time, my guy.
Scope creep, scope creep.
Yes.
Selected item balance, that tab.
Mm-hmm.
Is that black?
Yes, it's black.
Okay.
So you guys are maybe starting to see why it is generally suggested to design in black and white, because if you want to push enough contrast for things to be legible, you actually start to run out of values really, really fast. And it becomes very easy for things to start to become a mess. You have to start grouping them in ways where you're like, okay, no, actually, the navigation didn't matter as much. What mattered down at the bottom was the quick pay.
So Lynette, when doing wireframes,
Mm-hmm.
they're traditionally done in blue scale.
Okay.
Would the same, but this, if you used blue, wouldn't you have the same type, you'd be able to get the same type of visual?
No, because of how saturation works. Because saturation is from most saturated to white, and most saturated does not always equate to black.
But if you used a deep blue, for example.
If you used a deep blue that was actually deep enough to be black, it would be black. So if we look at our saturation scale here, I take it from white all the way through to black. And effectively, I built two saturation scales, and then I removed half of them because it was too overly complicated. We go from white to the highest density of pigment, and then we go from the highest density of pigment to the lowest density of pigment, but in the opposite direction.
So would you suggest then, because the wireframe is going to be blue scale, but that is, the wireframe is not intended to represent the end product in terms of all the styling. It's intended
Correct.
to represent the wireframe.
So
you
the
convert that to
wireframe,
black and white before deciding on making these kinds of decisions.
exactly.
Right, okay.
Because the purpose of the wireframe is actually to map out different elements of art: proportion,
Right.
space, shape, and line. It has nothing to do with value and color.
Got it. Okay.
All right, you guys have been patient. Let's bring out that C word. Let's play with color. Lucky. I know. It sounds very much like it belongs to a casino or something. So
I feel like we need to use purple and yellow.
purple and yellow. Okay. We've had the vote of purple and yellow.
Then throw in some green.
Well, let's do a Christmas interface and do red and green.
I was gonna say, like, lucky, green's often associated with lucky, like lucky clovers. Gold, we could just do yellow. I mean, do you guys want to do a split complementary, a single color, a tri-complementary? I would recommend not doing more than 3 because it's going to get way too complicated way too
Green
fast.
and yellow because, you know, rainbows and leprechauns.
All right, let's simplify this down. If we have to pick one color as our primary color, what's it going to be? Green? Green? All right, the vote is green. So I'm going to come down here to my primary hex. Let's just come in here, and I'm just going to pick this kind of middle green. Let's see here. That's our hex. So we have this green. Now we have another decision to make. We can leave this as an interface that's mostly black and white with green accents, or we can make this a green interface with black and white accents. Green interface. You want lots of color. Oh, okay, they're feeling like colorful people.
First option.
So the first option would be to leave it mostly black and white and then do accents of green.
No green.
No green. Daisy says no green interface. All right, online.
I'm saying no. Do a green.
Oh, do okay, never mind.
No comma green.
In person is unanimous.
Right. I thought my pause was there. Commas are important.
We just want to see if you can make it look good.
Bet. Challenge accepted. No belief. No belief. Okay.
I have
So
the utmost confidence in you.
I have been walking through casinos, and let me tell you, they could use some styling help. So their game, there may be an opportunity here.
maybe an opportunity. Okay, fair enough. So if we
I
look,
wouldn't gamble on it.
if we look here, FileMaker has programmed in 10 shades that go from white to black. And I'm just going to tell you guys, they also were smart enough to be like, hey, what if we built a saturation scale that also goes from faintest pigment to darkest pigment, which, spoiler alert, is 9 shades. And if you remove pure white from your grayscale, that is also 9. So they've made this really easy for us, because I can come here and I can count 1, 2, which means I'm going to go over to green and go 1, 2.
That's so smart. I never knew what the logic behind that grid. That's brilliant.
It's a grid, yes. So if you come in here, so for instance, when I built this hue scale, I went across, I think it was at this level, and I just picked every single one. They're exactly the same value, but they are all different hues, and they're the same level of saturation.
Right, you can also drag a color up to the top area, and it will give you three different values.
Wait, really? Whoa, that's so cool. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for the edumacation. All right, now let's look at this.
We'll turn you into a low coder yet.
1, 2, 3. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3. Ooh, it's intense. It is very minty. I blame this initial green color here because it's super minty. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kind of like this really rich green over here. I don't really like the minty. It's cold. So you know what this means? You know what this means? Aw.
Saturation?
Saturation, baby. You got it. Also, I lost my color window. Where's my color window? Come back.
It's in the lower right corner.
Oh, it's hiding. It was behind my computer. He's looking, where is Waldo? All right. So
It's fleeing in terror.
It's too minty. So let's just soften it a little bit. Right? I'm not touching the value. It's exactly the same value. But now it's a little bit softer, which makes this green look just a little too intense. So why aren't you? Oh, because I'm not, because it's dumb. There we go. Okay. So I could make it less saturated. Why is it not responding?
Because it's not selected, maybe.
There we go. Okay. So I could make it a little bit softer, right? So now we're getting kind of a soft green, or it can make this more intense. Personally, I think that kind of a mossy green looks really nice.
Moss is always wonderful.
Moss is always wonderful. I love it. Okay. And we got to come in.
Another moss.
So we got those two colors. Okay. I kind of like where we're going with this. We got to change you, my friend, to this mossy. I thought we were going to be friends, and instead you're ignoring me. Thank you. Thank you for doing what I asked you to. All right, let's see what value are we here? Oh, we're like smack in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, all right. Where did I? Saturation 15.
But that original color is based on the original shade of green, which you've changed.
Exactly. Which means we now got to come in here and change this one. Still the same value. Oh, we're doing this funsies again. Hooray! It has responded. So we could take this all the way to gray, which is where we were.
No.
We can tinge it. We were at super saturated. No one seems to be a fan. So yeah, we kind of like that one. Kind of like that. Okay.
Now, one of the things that's interesting is as we are adding color, adding hue, sorry, at every step of the way, the interface remains legible.
Exactly. And that is why we started in black and white.
So at any point we could stop adding hue and just leave the rest of it black and white, and it's still
legible. Exactly. Which is more important functionally, even if aesthetically it isn't always happy.
Right.
And I totally lost my train of thought. Don't know where I was going to go.
Got derailed.
I got derailed. Anywho, all right, let's come in here. We need to change this to match this. We're going to update you guys so you all match. Love it. Love it. Love it. And we had said that this was going to be the background. Really wish there was a faster shortcut to the eyedropper tool, but that's okay. No one asked me. And this is what? 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. That's almost the same color as that. So now here's where we're going to have to start tweaking our black and white a little bit. Like I said, every color has a relative value. And with a lot of practice, you can learn to see what the relative value is. That is something I can do. I have literally 17 years of practice ahead of all of you on this. So just be patient with yourselves. What happens with color, this is a thing called optical mixing. If you get a certain amount of pigment in a specific amount of space, the relative value actually starts to shift, which your eye can see and the computer can't tell. Because as far as it's concerned, mathematically, it's the same. But your eye does not believe it. That is why earlier you guys were like, no, make that text white, make that text black. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's as black as far as computer is concerned. That has to do with the way our eyes perceive contrast. It is much more nuanced than any computer can currently render, even with the, like, I think they're up to like 700 different individual hues that a pixel can put off. It's still not enough to actually match the way the human eye works. So for instance, when we started, this background navigation gray and this button gray were not the same. You guys saw that. But this green and that green are, I mean, I can tell that they're not the same, but they look like they're about the same value. So now we're having to start to play again with how we actually want this to look.
Is there any reason why we're not using a second color instead of sticking with green?
Let me finish this and then I will answer that question.
Okay.
We have two options. We can either decide to match. Less is more, that is my preference. Or we can take it darker. We have yet to introduce black into this interface, so we could take it pure black. That is now hyper contrast. Or, as Doc has just pointed out, we can add a second color. Let's talk about adding a second color for a second. Down here, you'll notice that I have primary, secondary, and tertiary. I've also given them secondary names. We have action, success, and error. There are a few things that every interface is ever going to do that are really important. First of all, your primary. That's whatever is going to make it look like your client's website, whether it's from their logo or they're like, we like black and white, we want to be dramatic, don't give us color. That is your primary. Your success is whatever flashes up when someone has done something right. That could be banners, that could be badges, that could be submit buttons, that could be hover states. I don't care. Whatever is a success as far as completing something, that had better be the same every single time, or y'all are just being mean to your users. Please, I'm begging you. The third thing that happens in any system is something goes wrong. An error, an alert, it's broken down. These badges over here that we've been conveniently ignoring about the loan sharks telling us they're about to come eat our souls. When something goes wrong, we want to alert people. We almost always use color for alerts, and they're almost always some kind of red or orange or something adjacent that will read as that intensity, and that is because of all of red's associations culturally, which I'm not getting into today because I told you we weren't talking about color social psychology. But there is a reason red almost always shows up as an alert. So if we're going to add a second color, we need to be very, very intentional with what that second color means. This first color we can play with. It's fun. It's whatever we want. It's green. We have multiple greens. All the green means is this is the green interface. It doesn't mean anything specific, except that it's matching our client's vibe, their look, their aura, pick your word. If we add a second color, now it's adopting a meaning. So if we only add this color to this payment button, for instance, its job is now scream at me. Hello, I am here, I am different. Please pay attention. That's great, that's fine. Use it that way every single time. Do not take that same color and put it for the plus of this text, because now they're like, okay, I can clearly click on the payment button, but I can't click on this one text. Why are they the same color? That makes no sense. And whatever I pray, I don't know, whatever you believe in, do not use the thing that means to represent alerts anywhere in your interface unless you are alerting them of something, ever. Or they will not trust anything that pops up because it will mean nothing. So this is what I mean by consistent color meaning, number 4. So we can add a new color for payment. If we're going to do that, I would recommend it probably be our success color, because theoretically it's telling us, hey, you were successful in your payment. And if you click into me, you can see the details that prove it. But we also over here have a quick pay, and we have some big buttons up here. And if we go back to our purpose and the objects that we said were most important, these payment buttons aren't in that list. So if we want to make something scream at me, I am different, it should probably be one of those. So back to my question, do we want to make this button green? No. The same navigation green? Do we want to make it a different green, or do we want to make it black and white? Because that doesn't matter as far as associated meaning goes.
I personally would, I think, leave it where it is now.
A darker green?
Leave it as that green, because my understanding of how the user would use this imaginary interface is that, at least as we've defined it, it's not one of the primary actions.
It's not. Right?
If we went back and changed our definition and said, no, it is one of the primary actions, well, then maybe we change the color. But based on how we've spec'd out this project, it is not important.
It is not important. I agree. So I would vote we make these two the same navigation color, because we have that green, and its purpose here is to segregate the set of information so that way your brain has an easy time of parsing this information. That is exactly what we are doing here. We are segregating these words to tell you this information, and we are singling out this spot because it's like, oh, hey, by the way, if you want more details, just click me. But it doesn't actually matter if you don't click me, right? It's not that important. It's different, but it is not that important. Now let's talk about these important buttons. We've got the quick pay. We have this calendar that presumably manipulates this report. And then we have these 4 buttons. We can either make all of them white with pure black text, because that doesn't exist in our interface right now and would make it very interesting and different. Or we can add that second color. What do we want to do?
Second color.
Okay, we're voting for second color.
White would contrast enough with that light green background.
All right, that is an excellent point. So now we get to pick our second color. We have some options. I would highly recommend that if you guys want to go yellow, we're going to have to go kind of a gold, dark mustard yellow. Any of the rest of these are fair game, except for green, because we already have green. So what do you want to do?
Gold.
Mustard, gold, okay. Dandelion.
I like the gold because the you have gold and the psychological linkage between gold and coin.
I really like that thought too.
That looks a little too orange, though.
So we have something that's kind of a gold, and now we have to get it in the interface, because now we're dealing with color optical mixing. And once, if you're not doing something that is in a direct complementary or tertiary color palette, which green and yellow absolutely are not, you have to find the exact hues in context next to each other. And this is where we're going to have to start making some real compromises, because I'm telling you, what it looks on my laptop is not the same as my Presentation screen is not the same as that TV and is certainly as heck not the same as whatever people online are seeing. I seriously doubt they match. Mine are color calibrated. I don't know about that TV, and I can't guarantee anybody online. This is part of why you often see people operating in complementary palettes, blue and orange, yellow and purple, red and green, because no matter how their color calibration is set up, it's relative, and those pairs always play nice with each other. There's always enough contrast. Yellow and green are sister colors. They're touching, right? Green is yellow plus blue, right? It's right next to yellow. So if we come in here, we're gonna have to start playing around with some of the saturation levels to really make this work. Oops, I don't wanna mess with the brightness. We wanna leave that alone. So we're actually gonna have to tweak it. So I can make it, oh, that looks too green, and that is too orange. So that's a very cold yellow. And that gray text is really throwing us off. Let's turn that to black, get it out of the way.
I use the same green as the sidebar for that text.
I'm so glad that you guys got to that before I did, because that is going to read the most cleanly. And again, less is more. We want to reduce the number of things that we have. Now you'll notice that when I put these two on top of each other, they're actually, I don't know if they're very good friends. So here's something we have to do. Let's take this hexadecimal.
So it would be if they were different. Yeah.
And we're going to put it as the foreground. No, I wanted you to paste. Aw.
Yeah, I don't see this color relationship working out in the end.
Eric may be ahead of me.
Will you be taking questions sometime before we're done?
Yes. So it fails for small text, which is how we're using it, which means that's a no-go. And it passes for one area of large text, but not for the other. And it does pass for objects, which does prove true for what we're seeing here, right? This is a big rectangle. That's a big rectangle. There's enough contrast. The small text, it doesn't work. So we cannot use that green. So either we have to change the text or we have to change the yellow color. So I ask you guys again, do you actually want to use yellow? Okay.
Well, the complementary color of green is red, and red's for warnings, so that's not an option.
Not necessarily. Yeah, I would really stay away from red. I think if we, oh, it's not registered. Sometimes we do not get to choose the company's colors. So something we may want to consider is more of an orange. I know that is not yellow.
Yeah, well, it looks.
No, that's not gonna work. Yeah.
That's how you weed them out, right?
What if you made the text on QuickPay a darker green that was in the same, in other words, reduce the value of the green, keep it in the same hue, but
You can try that.
make it darker?
What were you saying, Rob?
Our grayscale was actually white.
It was.
So that would lead me to like a much lighter saturation, whatever our secondary color is.
Our secondary color is going to be yellow. That means it would look like that.
No.
That's about where it was, right? As far as value goes, but does not register as yellow.
The hue should be a lighter yellow.
The hue is as light as it goes. It's at 99%. That's what I'm talking about with hue and saturation not being the same thing. So once you max out on value, that means your pigment is so dense, it's registering as too dark and you got to bump it.
But in your hue scale there,
Mhm.
the hue that you had selected was not the lightest, not the brightest yellow.
Right, because if I go any brighter, it starts to look green, and then we're back into our primary, which means it's not a secondary color.
What-
It's just green.
What happened to keeping the quick pay button the same gold as in the secondary success and just making the text a darker value?
Right.
Because Robert had a suggestion and I wanted to play with it.
Oh, okay.
That is what that would look like. There's enough contrast. It's
Maybe
fine.
it's because of the distance that I don't see, but in the hue bar,
Mhm.
it looks like you've got a shade of orange selected in the hue instead of the yellow.
Right. You see how as I move into yellow, it starts to look really neon and kind of nasty?
Mm-hmm.
That's because of its context within green. This is that optical color mixing. Trying so hard not to get into color theory. Basically, what your eyes do is they match colors around them. So how yellow looks next to green is not how yellow looks next to yellow, which is not how yellow looks next to red. So a brighter yellow does not necessarily mean it's gonna register as yellow if it's next to green. It's gonna look like a yellow-green. And if
You see this on,
it's gonna look lime, which means we're now back into green territory. We are not in the second color. It will read as the same. You're also looking
you see this, oh, sorry.
difference.
You,
Yes,
you see this in some of the optical illusion things that appear on Facebook and other social media. Well, they'll say, here's this and here's this, and this is the same color, but they look completely different.
Yep, that is exactly that phenomenon.
But what if we like it?
I kind of like the yellow, and I think that yellow would extend a little bit better if we were able to color the logo that same yellow.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
This one is really intense, kind of like neon nasty yellow.
What we currently have.
Okay. Yep. Well, I wouldn't actually do the text. It's not big enough.
You're not like
I sympathize with you, Eric, but the masses have spoken.
So you'll go for the slow pay.
It's like if color was a minor second. It's just like
It just it doesn't work. Sometimes the colors don't work. You cannot always do just any color you want. It does kind of work as a leprechaun.
I don't know. I'm not gonna do salad today. What should we have for lunch?
I would highly recommend, if we're looking for something that has enough contrast with green, but we don't want to actually go into red, you want to go into a berry direction.
Yeah, ¿sí quedó? Okay, let's kill them all. All right, well, I'm gonna get myself something. Max isn't what he's getting out for nothing. Ready? Yeah.
I've already,
Yeah, right, right.
yeah, I already had burritos.
It's a turkey sandwich, chicken noodle soup.
Okay, what is your opinion on gradients for?
Can I speak to that question, Lynette?
Sure, go ahead.
I was holding that for later on. I think what I heard Heather say was about gradients.
She was asking my opinion on them. Yes.
So I want to make a couple of points about gradients that I've been saving for now. Many of the FileMaker objects that exist in the FileMaker themes by default are built with gradients.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing in the real world that exists to the human eye as a flat color. In fact, if everybody wants to focus their eye for a moment on the wall behind where Lynette is sitting, I'm sure that it was painted with a particular color that came out of a gallon of paint. But in fact, it is a gradient because of the way the light hits it. So a lot can be done with gradients to make colors seem more like the natural world, because there really is nothing that your eye sees around you that's a flat color.
That is true.
That's why I said it.
But percentages. So rather than, so say the colored circle behind Lucky Coin, if that were instead a great a percentage of either white or black.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an opinion or color thought on that?
I don't understand the question.
So if that circle were white, but 10–15%, you would get the look of a different shade of green.
So if this
Gray 15%.
is,
So if it's white,
okay. If it's white,
but a percentage, so go down to the percentage
you're talking about opacity now.
Opacity.
opacity, opacity, yes.
Okay,
So if you made that,
that's the wrong slider.
there's no slider for that. You just have
Yeah,
to
it
put
is.
the number.
Yeah, no, I've got a slider on it.
Okay.
What about it?
So what is your opinion on doing that? Because that's a common technique for giving some variation on a shade
That you know will work with.
that you know will be consistent.
It's the exact same technique. It's a different tool and a different method of doing exactly the same thing.
Okay,
But it's real easy.
but it's easy.
It's easier, it is more limited because now everything is white toned
Or black.
or
But you
black
can do the
toned.
same thing to make it a darker.
Right. It
But
tends,
opacity reveals the color behind it.
exactly.
Say that again, Dennis?
Opacity reveals, or I should say, allows the color behind it to be revealed.
Correct.
So if we wanted to play with opacity,
I would have,
I
thinking I actually just want to kill
primarily
that.
just black and white for what I was asking about.
And then we're gonna come back here
I think
slightly.
the gold button with the quick pay would have worked if we'd gone with gold for the logo.
Maybe. We do not have the time to sit here and find exactly the right shade of gold, honestly.
It isn't like there's a client paying for this time.
Golds look close to oranges, and oranges easily get grouped into reds, which means you can kind of use golds as alerts and warnings.
What was the term you used, Lynette, about what the color's doing visually? And I don't remember how you described it, but it can be seen in your grayscale over there, your value brightness scale, where they look like gradients because they're positioned against lighter and darker shades. So the part that, like the top of one of those blocks looks darker than the bottom of one of those blocks, although that block is just one shade. But the eye does something when it sees those colors next to each other that gives it the illusion of being a gradient. What was
all right?
That visual.
Probably the
That is massive scope creep. To answer that question, I have to explain a number of things. We are so far past time, I feel bad.
I'm not asking you to explain it in detail, but there's a term that you used for that about what happens to color when one color is next to another. Like when we were looking at the gold or the yellow, we were describing how when we go with the yellow,
Optical mixing?
That's it. Okay. Is that the same thing that's making that look like a gradient?
Kind of, but
okay, that's good enough.
not exactly. because optical mixing has to do with colors. There is a different term that has to do with when there's where your eye overlays a rounding on something, because it's too tiring for your eye to see flats.
Okay.
Separate thing, similar phenomenon.
Okay.
All right, we are very much over time, but I hope this has given you guys some things to play with next time you want to, I see the question, Dennis. Next time you guys are in your designer seat. So as far as rules of thumb, design in black and white, make sure you have enough contrast. Absolutely restrict the number of things that actually matter in your interface, because too much information, just, they're not going to use it. It doesn't make sense. You have to be intentional with what you select. Always work big to small. You could see that once we start getting big values in, and then we went in and started changing small stuff, we had to go back and we had to tweak some things. If you start at the smallest thing, I'm just telling you from experience, that process will take 4 to 5 times as long, because it's going to be the same thing, but then you get all the way out big, and then you realize you got to go back and change the small. Min 3, max 7. I didn't actually go into this at the appropriate time. That stands for a minimum of 3 values, maximum of 7 values. This is how you keep your interface from being too overwhelming and too much. If we go through and count, we have 1 green, 2 green, 3 green, 4 purple, 5 white, and if you do wind up using black in here, 6 black. That is 6 of 7. You've got spot for 1 more, and I'm telling you that should probably be your alert color for when there's a warning, all right? If you go outside of 7, it's too much. Yes, values count. If you start adding hues and then you're counting multiple hues, this is part of why I recommend not doing more than 3 colors really in any kind of a design, because if you start doing different values or different saturations of those colors, you're now at like 12 different individual things the computer is trying to render, which again, you have no guarantee that's going to happen. And 2, that your person's eye is trying to process, and you can't guarantee their eyes are capable of it.
Do you like or use any of the web tools that can generate swatch palettes, where you basically pick a color and it will sort of spit out different variations with complementary colors, other variations with where they just change the values?
Sometimes I can do all of that really well in my head.
Sure.
So it's more that I have that built into my head. Those are very useful. However, if I'm given something for one of our clients, I usually look at their logo and I try to pull hexadecimals from there and build it off of that. So in a sense, their logo builds the palette for me, and then I just have to get really creative. But yes, those can be very helpful tools. Consistent color meaning. If you assign a purpose or a function to something, stick with it, don't break it, make it faster to parse the information, be polite to your users. They're the ones that have to spend all day looking at it. And finally, less is more. All right, I'm so sorry we are over time. I will stick on for questions for people online. If you have them for me, you guys know where I live, basically. You can find me later. But let's go ahead and bring the event officially to a close. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Well done. Hear, hear.